I'm gonna go check on my kid, so I'm gonna get us kicked off. This is your chance. You don't care how nitty gritty it is. If you've got like weird, random, detailed questions about some weird thing about college, if you have general questions about if your students are prepared or not, I don't know, whatever it is you've got, lay it on us and we'll see what we can do, okay? Who's gonna start us off?
Takes courage.
All right. Oh, no, there's a question.
Kylie.
What if you don't know what you want to do or what you want to major in? Right. There's so many things you like and nothing really stands out to you.
Kylie, what a terrible problem you to have. You love so many things. So many things make you happy. You're interested in so much stuff. I'm so sorry. And that's what you're doing.
And it's even worse, you're good at them.
I'd say I was very much like you when I was going into college. I think I knew the kind of place I wanted to be, but I changed my major 5 times my freshman year.
Wait, in 1 year?
In 1 year. I completed the paperwork. Like, I officially changed my major 5
dedication.
times. Yeah. One piece of advice I would give you is don't go into debt for that. Like, if you don't have a very clear picture of exactly what the next step of is in college, it's a big mistake to take on tons of loans. It's almost always a big mistake to take on tons of loans, because even if you think you're going to be a doctor, you might change your mind and become a teacher, and then what's going to happen to your loans? It's going to be terrible. Yeah. But yeah, I would focus on the kind of place and the kind of people you want to be around if you don't know the kind of subjects you want to study.
Yeah, in that sense, you may not have a clear vision that you want to go into nursing, but you know the value of a total liberal arts education, and let's say you feel like you've had a very good start somewhere, wherever you went to high school, and you want to pursue that because you see that the value goes beyond a specific vocation. That might be one way to approach it, but it's certainly not, it's not the only way.
And you can narrow down your options too. And I think narrowing down your options can be victories, small victories. When you say, oh, I do not want to be a game show host. So
I'll go to game show college.
Not going to go to game show. Great, awesome, that's cut off. But that you winnowed your options just a little bit. And I think that's good. I think that's helpful too.
It's also the case that many jobs now are requiring grad school degrees in order to participate, and so it's often the case that it sort of, I mean, it still matters what you get your bachelor's in, but you can get your bachelor's in one thing and then go to grad school and do a different thing, right? So my bachelor's was in communications, and then I'm working on a degree in philosophy, or I got my master's in philosophy, and now I'm working on humanities in general. So you can kind of bounce around a lot. So it's not always the case that like your major will lock you in somewhere for the rest of your life, like, should you want to like go to grad school or do something else later.
Is joining Greek life worth it?
You may be looking at a group of people.
So I will answer on behalf of my father. So my dad was a 4-year fraternity. He would have been president of his fraternity his senior year, except he got accepted without deferral or to a dental school, so he left early. So he actually doesn't have a bachelor's. It's really funny. He's a dentist without a bachelor's degree. Yeah. And he loved it. So his fraternity was sort of known around campus at UC Davis as the gentleman's fraternity, and like all the sororities apparently actually liked planning events with him because, you know, like they weren't jerks and they were like really nice and they treated ladies really well, and everyone liked them, and he really enjoyed it and really loved it. And so I think if the thing you're looking for is like good, strong community, and you find a place that you feel like what's being done is the building of good, strong community, and it's not prioritizing other things, then yeah, like that could be good. But I think there's also a sort of continuous potential cultural trend in the fraternity, like in the Greek system, that could be detrimental as well. And so I think it's got to be like a place to place, chapter to chapter, like what a particular chapter is doing and what they seem to value.
I'd like to echo that. I think you can have good experiences with Greek life. I think the strong reputation is against that. Now, what Greek life offers is community, and like a built-in group of friendships. If you're not attracted to some of the cultural aspects of Greek life, that doesn't mean that you're not going to have contacts when you graduate or friendships. There are a million places on a college campus to build real community that will be beneficial and like good friendships, but will also help you down the line to get jobs or connections or roommates or anything like that.
Also, if you find yourself with the kind of person who's too attracted to that kind of community, to what may be to the detriment of why you're actually at college, that happens to a lot of people. So some self-assessment might be good of like, will this become so much the thing I do that I forget to do my homework? Don't do that.
Because it's a lot of money to spend to like party for 4 years.
I'm not asking the question, but just following up on what you said, there are also a lot of professional organizations on campus for which you can get that community feeling too, depending upon which one you go to. I know my daughter went to UT and was part of the Hispanic Business Association. It was wonderful. They did so, I mean, it was like being in a fraternity or a sorority.
Yeah, I will say, there's a wonderful study out of Purdue in partnership with, was it Barnum or, that talks about after watching 25 years of college alumni, what elements of college make for a successful life over 25 years. It's a really wonderful study. Things that don't matter, where you went to college, what kind of college it was, how much money you paid, if it was public or private. The things that do matter, did you have a smaller community that you were really a part of? Like that's a very valuable thing if you find the right one. Was that community dedicated to the same things you're dedicated to and so helped push you along the way? Did you have a mentor? That's really, really valuable. So looking for the kind of places that can provide you with those sorts of communities show long-term to be hugely, hugely beneficial if you find the right kind of thing.
What if you feel like you don't have something that you're just like really good at? I'd like them to stand out for in your applications.
That's
for an
not true.
application?
Oh, like for essays and stuff?
Yeah, or just like you feel like you go through high school, you don't feel like you're really good at anything. It's like, what do you do when you go to college? Like, how do you know what to choose to do stuff?
What do you care about the most? So first of all, you're good at a lot of things. So like,
She's talking about in general.
Oh, like the average person. Okay, so if your friend is asking this question, right? So A of all, right, all of our students here are at an institution that is like truly odd and remarkable in comparison with the average high school student in America. So chances are if you just like sort of describe school in an essay, people are going to be like, what? You did what? Like, this is wild. And so that's already a thing, like literally just doing what you're doing. But yeah, think about the things that you're passionate about, the things that make you you, the things that you're interested in, that you dedicate time to. Like those are the things that you're going to write about the best, right? Because you care about them the most, and probably those are the things that are going to show up, and because you're going to pop off that page. Right, and then that's what they want. They want to get to know you.
There's a lot of college test prep programs out there. Is there ones that are better or worth the money more, in your opinion?
If Megan were in the room right now, she would point out, just for everyone to keep clear in their minds, all of those organizations are for-profit companies that are just trying to make lots of money, and they do. They're very successful. In general, a College Board SAT, ACT prep book will do what you need it to do. It'll give you some strategies, it will give you the kind of questions that you need. Their website's the same way. You can take practice exams. Don't pay people, I don't think. Unless you really, really struggle with testing. There's a lot of really expensive like tutoring programs and stuff, and I had one student a while ago who got caught for plagiarism on an essay but she was being taught to do that through her SAT prep programs. And they were like, see, you paid for all these materials, just go ahead and cheat. You know, it's kind of like a really weird cultural shift that was a problem. Yeah, I would say the basics, College Board books and websites will give you the kind of just practice you need. You should know the material, and so really what it is testing strategies that you want to kind of get up on.
And those strategies can be taught fairly quickly. So Mrs. Mueller was really good at that, and since she's not here, I'll just go ahead and say she got a really good SAT score. So good that someone at her school was like, oh, I'm going to tutor you for free because I want to see just how high this can get. And it got a bit higher. So now, sometimes though, there are people in your community, certainly at this school, Mrs. Mueller is one of them, who are excellent with test-taking strategies, and you know that's part of the role that we have here is to assist your students in these extra things that we don't necessarily have an entire department for, but we have someone on staff or faculty who's really, really good at it, and they make themselves available in general when requested. So, Mrs. Mueller, the question was, are there specific standardized test-taking services that we highly recommend, like in preparation for a standardized test?
So I already mentioned there are for-profit companies.
Okay.
There's lots of ways you could spend your money.
Yeah.
I told everyone that you're really smart.
All right. The Khan Academy made all of their SAT resources free. So if you go online, that guy is already a billionaire because of the online tutoring program that he formulated, and so he decided to make, I would say it's the best resource that's available for SAT prep, and it's 100% free now because he decided he wanted to make it free, which is great.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think you just have to check the box. I don't think there was a cost on the SAT, but they will. You give permission for them to see your answers, and they will show you the ones you missed.
Yes.
And you can work them specifically, so that
Yeah.
can kind of hone you on your second
Yeah.
time and go, I got this, I need to put some effort into this.
Yeah.
Reading.
And they
I did
dig,
the math, it was really helpful with that.
yeah, and they dig deep into the data. So the questions all have, usually on the SAT, every question is a type of question, and it could be several types at once. So it could be like a type 2 and type 3 math question, or it could be like a, you know, a couple, like a certain type of reading comprehension question. And you can dig as granularly as you would like into the data to say, okay, my weakness is this type of reading comprehension question. So I'm gonna go to the Khan Academy Resources website and just drill that type so that I can get stronger at them. I'm going to sit down with my notepad and try to do half math problems backwards as quickly as I can as a drill to try to speed my time up on the SAT math section, things like that. And they give you exactly the resources from taking full practice tests on your computer to printing out a full practice test and sitting for a mock exam in the comfort of your own home, to getting a question emailed to you every day, and when you answer it, they tell you why your answer was right or wrong and give you pointers for how you should have been able to figure out which answer was right. There are so many free ways to prepare for the SAT that I would feel horribly guilty for telling you to spend your money to do it. Yeah, Teresa.
Are you gonna have like a standardized like test?
Yeah. So this is the first time, we actually did this the very first year that the school existed before we opened our doors, but it was right when I found out that I was pregnant with my first child. So then it was the last time we ever did it at the school, but now we're gonna do it again. So this summer, we're gonna be offering, I think it's gonna be the beginning of August, we're gonna do, is it a week of math, SAT math boot camp, plus a couple of days, plus the test taking strategy worked in there. So you might be really great at Algebra 2 and Trig, and you might be the kind of person who's gonna nail calculus, but if you don't know how to do math problems really fast, like I said, halfways and backwards, so that you can get to the answer as quickly as possible, then you aren't ready for the SAT math section. So we'll work on that, and we'll work on other general test taking strategies and stuff like that too, yes.
What if you like taking the SAT like before August?
We're gonna have, well, if you take it before then,
Like spring and,
yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to meet with you one-on-one before then, but we're gonna do the SAT thing, and then there's usually a test date, like the 3rd or 4th week of August. And so the intention would be, you drill with us for a week, and just a couple weeks later, we all go to the test together. And I don't know, we'll like, you know, have breakfast and rent a van and have a great time. We'll all go to the same testing site. We'll try to make it as easy as humanly possible for you.
It's fine if you guys take a spring exam, but you do want to take it 2 or 3 times, not more than 3 usually. Or just take it once if you are great. So if you take a spring exam, doing this camp and then taking the August exam will give you a chance to see how much is this just strategy, and again, you can submit those composite scores. Something that Mrs. Mueller didn't mention is you can submit your scores after the fact as well. So you don't have to know exactly what colleges you want to send your scores to when you take the SAT. You can choose not to send your first go-around to any college. You could wait to your second. Your second could turn out to be worse than your first, and then you go back to your first and send those ones, you know? So like, you've got a little bit of flexibility and control over where those scores go. And so it's fine to take one in the spring of your junior year, but we'd recommend the August exam too.
And you can keep taking the SAT right up to the bitter end. There's a December 1st deadline for a handful of the colleges. I can't remember what it is. I think it might be the Common App. It's early action December and like regular in January 1st. I think it must be the Apply Texas. That's the December 1st deadline. The test deadline is December 8th. So you even have like time once if you're really cramming to get those applications in, you still have like a week after that to make sure your test scores get to the right spot. So you can be like retaking the SAT right up till the last possible second. I don't recommend that, but you have lots of opportunities to get the score that you want. Yes?
when would you recommend people start studying for the SAT?
Okay. Lots of people have opinions about this. Some people have students who start sitting for these tests when they're in 7th grade. I do not recommend that unless you're like me and love taking tests. Love taking tests. I take it for fun. I took the SAT practice. I take it for fun. I'm happy to do it. I really enjoy them. If you've got one of those kids, let them at it. You know, they can take it as many times as they want. That's great. But if you're the sort of person who has other things to do,
Has a life.
if you feel like you need to do a lot of preparation to really do well on the exam, I would recommend taking the exam a few times, having spent all that time preparing for it, rather than taking this. It's like, you know, how many times do I beat my head against the wall till the wall cracks? Well, every time you hit the wall with your head gets weaker, right? You're also breaking your head. So when you're taking standardized tests, that's the thing you have to keep in mind. There's a balance for every student. Like, some people have test-taking anxiety, and so they take the test once, they wig out, they do a little prep, they take the test again right away, and then you never want to make them take it again, and that's totally fine. Some kids could take it 8 times and get a little better every time, but that's not most kids. Especially because we have such a rigorous high school here at our school. How much of your students' time should they be spending trying to prep for a standardized test that matters once? It's an important test. It is an important test for some colleges, and it's an important test if you're like really working hard to get into a certain scholarship bracket at a certain institution. But man, I would way rather have your student read their books well for our classes and like, you know, do their biology homework. If they're taking test prep courses and taking the test, you know, every couple of months, I feel like the priorities might be in the wrong place. So that's the thing that I would caution against.
It's also important to remember that because everyone knows about SAT anxiety and that kind of thing, and everything in standardized testing is governed by for-profit institutions. A lot of these institutions are tapping into that anxiety and offering, hey, get started early and everything will work out fine. That's not necessarily the case, and often it can lead to this kind of fatigue.
If 5,000 parents decide their students should take the SAT from when they're 7th grade till they're in high school, and they pay to be enrolled in programs that are associated with that they're making a lot of money off of your anxiety. And unless your student is really, really benefiting from it, unless your student's going to be like the top half of the top % who ends up getting a scholarship because of their participation in that program, then it's not worth it. For them, it's worth it if you enroll, but for you, it might not be.
Even the PSAT falls into this category,
Yeah.
right? The one benefit of taking the PSAT, which is a scaled back exam, it's not even a direct reflection of the SAT. The one benefit is if you're gonna be a National Merit Scholar. You might need to know yourself a bit. I was not a National Merit Scholar. That was not something that was me at all. So is it valuable to take the PSAT? I don't know, like it might not be. Also, if you have a 9th or 10th grader and you're having them take the SAT, there's math they've never seen.
That's what I was gonna
So then you're presenting them with an exam they know they're failing parts of, and that can increase anxiety as well for no reason, right? Because of course they're just not there yet.
Once you take the SAT, once you take the SAT, are you no longer eligible to take the PSAT? How does that work?
PSAT, again, it is nothing. It doesn't go to colleges, it's not a thing.
It's for your own,
It's for your own
benefit and your own
practice, so it
feeling
doesn't
of,
matter. Yeah.
my student's this old and knows this much stuff, this is the score they got. That could be a reflection of how well they'll do in 2 years when they actually know all the things they need to know to actually take the SAT. That's what the PSAT is for. It's, yeah.
It's a predictive score. You'll even see that when you get the official results. It'll say, your student will likely have this score in a year.
Okay. I know last year that you'll have the juniors take like the CLT equivalent for the SAT. You're all going to do this again?
Yes, yeah, we're gonna do it again.
In the spring?
Okay. In the early spring. The CLT, the classic learning test, is the least horrible standardized test. You read passages from real, actual books, like good books, like they're from Dostoevsky, and they're, like, but it's people we like. And they ask you real questions, and the math is harder. The math goes up through trigonometry, I think. It's very similar to the SAT in a lot of other ways, and there are about 400 colleges in the United States that currently accept those scores. Visit colleges in Saint Constantine being one of them. So we will be offering that again, and I don't know, I might do like a lunchtime like prep thing in advance, because they have things on their test like analogies. The parents in the room will remember this is to this as that is to that with the colons in between them. The SAT got rid of it years ago, but the CLT still uses it. Things like that. There's just some like test taking oddities that appear on there, so we might review them. But yeah, we'll offer the test again this spring.
I love the analogies.
I did too.
They got rid of them. I got really mad at them while taking. This is a great example of the tests changing to try to appease the people who are taking the test. Analogies were too hard, so they removed them from the test because it was saying that people weren't ready for college. They needed enough people to look like they were ready for college, so they changed the structure of the test. The SAT, you used to lose a quarter of a point if you guessed wrong. So there was a benefit to leaving a question blank.
They don't do that now?
No, they changed it because too many people were getting bad scores. They wanted people to get higher scores so that more people would feel like they were ready for college, so that more people would go to college because there's money in that. And so they changed the test so that the students would get better scores, and then they changed the public high schools so that they were teaching to the easier test, so that the kids would look like they were more ready even though they were being taught less.
They did the same thing to the AP exams.
Yes.
Is that right?
How is this not illegal?
You should start school, Mr. E.
Yeah, it's so dumb.
Can you explain the difference between the different types of degrees you can get? Like,
Do you mean like BA,
Yeah.
BS, or do you mean like subjects?
no,
Or do you mean all those
like
things?
associate, like bachelor's, like what is it?
Sorry, we're using lingo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't.
Stacey, do you want to?
Yeah.
No, I'd love to just at least start answering that. There are sort of layers, sort of levels of degrees you can earn, right? They're usually associated with a time frame. Now, I have to add though, that time frame actually is almost meaningless today. But we often refer to a 2-year degree, or more formally an associate degree. That's like the first level. It's sort of the equivalent of sort of general education in many cases, right? You sort of what we might call a core curriculum, and it's usually a smaller number of credits, doable in 2-year time frame. There are lots of schools that offer them. Community colleges often offer them. In our world today, because for the reasons that Megan was just suggesting, because we've watered down the value of degrees by making them sort of weaker and weaker, diluting, right? Associate's degrees aren't very valuable anymore. There was a time when that was a good entree into a number of careers. It's getting harder and harder to make that case anymore. So the next level up is the one maybe you're more familiar with, the bachelor degree. That's usually, we often call that a 4-year degree.
Or undergraduate.
Yeah,
That's another
yeah.
word for that, undergraduate.
27% of students who started college this year will finish that degree in 4 years. The rest will not. So it's really not, it has nothing to do with time frame anymore. But it's includes that sort of, much of the same material an associate's degree might, so the general education part, but then there's more on top of it. So you often will identify, as we said before, a major course of study. So on top of your core or your general education, you're going to delve deeper into a particular subject. And you might also include maybe a plate of electives that go with that. So it's a higher level of sort of expectation and work. You're doing more stuff over a longer period of time, but it also reflects sort of more effort on your part. Bachelor's degrees, I won't go into this in too much detail because your eyes will glaze over. There are different types of them. There are Bachelor of Arts degrees, Bachelor of Science degrees. There are bachelors of all sorts of sciences. There's a nursing science, there are engineering bachelor degrees. It gets very particular sometimes. Business degrees have their own special designation. But they're all just variations on that same 4-year college degree, the undergraduate degrees we usually think of it. Beyond that, there are graduate degrees. The next 2 levels, which you don't need to worry about right now, would be master's degrees and doctoral degrees. As Mr. Yee said, though, there's, again, because of the dilution of the quality and the content, master's degrees, which usually in the past had been sort of very special things that would connote maybe a special degree of accomplishment, have now become almost sort of normal sort of expectations in many careers.
So if I'm like going to earn like a bachelor degree, is there like, you have to take like this class, like you take the 101 and the 102 or 103, or is it like you take like different types of classes?
Sure, yeah, so sort of again, thinking of the general education for a year or 2, probably, you'll take courses that are more introductory in nature. Lots of schools have different numbering systems, but you're right. So many of them will be sort of like a 100 or 1,000 level designation that implies, normally it's for freshmen and sophomores, 200 level designations, maybe up to 300 and 400, and maybe even 500 or 1,000 level denominations, which would suggest like, you're a senior or an advanced student. So yeah, the courses sort of are, the idea is they get more challenging the further up that scale you go. There's lots of variation in that, though, and everything I just said, there's exceptions to all of it everywhere you go. That's sort of the general scheme.
When you get to college, they'll give you a little sheet, and it has everything that you need to do, and basically you'll just, pretty meticulously throughout your career, if you're like me, you'll just be like, okay, I finished this, I finished this, I finished this, I have this many more to go. And
It's
then
like
you'll
getting
just
your smoothie card stamped.
Yeah.
It's
It's like a really specific, expensive smoothie card.
It's called the
It doesn't
degree
come with
plan.
smoothies.
It's called the degree plan. You
Yeah.
have to follow it. If you don't follow your degree plan perfectly, you might think you're graduating and you're not graduating, and that's a very expensive mistake. So go to a school that has admissions counselors, not just admissions counselors, actual counselors who can help you make sure that you're keeping track of where you are in your degree, because if you go to a big school and you're on your own, you might mess up, and it's one of the most expensive mistakes you could ever make.
Maybe you could apply that because of your area of expertise in math and talk for a minute about prerequisites and what that is and why that matters vis-a-vis what you got a position in. It's sort of an obvious example of where that came from.
Right, we're going to slow you down. Okay. You want to take, well, I can only speak to the math, of course, but you want to take your math classes here very seriously because in all likelihood you'll be taking a placement exam. Sometimes they'll accept your AP scores in lieu of your placement exam, and they'll just either place you out of calculus or place you in like Calc 3 if you took our calculus course. So probably most of you will end up in at least the college algebra, and what you don't want to place into is anything below college algebra because in all likelihood you won't receive any credit for it. Okay, and that's also very expensive.
Yes. They sign you up for classes that don't contribute toward your degree. They're classes that they say, you have to finish this so that you can get a degree from us. Like you weren't even started yet. You have to pay what you pay for a class, but it's 0 credit hours. And it's basically a remedial course. And then next semester, you can take the real math class. And you can pay for that one too.
HCC has 13 levels of remedial math.
Before the actual college math class.
That's as many years as you were in school, right? So
sort of like place values and stuff?
I have no idea what they do. It was something that came up when we were researching dual credit. 13 levels before you can even get to a class that'll allow you to complete your math requirement for any degree at the university level, okay? So,
And there's enough of a demand for that too.
yeah, that's why they're
So,
there.
yeah, so the students show up with the math that they've taken in high school and I guess didn't pay attention at all. And have to retake up to 13 levels of remedial math to get to a level of being able to take college algebra.
And you
Yeah.
pay for all of those, and you can't move on until you pass them.
Right, that's where, I think that's what you were maybe getting
Well,
at with
yeah,
prereqs.
even, that's all, that's very informative, but even, let's say you're at the front end of your junior year, and you're taking whatever course you're taking, to your point, Mrs. Mueller, there may be things that you're expecting to say, here's my senior level classes, but oops, if I didn't finish this prerequisite, I'm actually gonna take that junior level class and add a semester or even more to your career. That is the connotation of it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. As Mr. Yee and Mrs. Neacsu were suggesting, right? If you don't track this carefully, if you don't follow that degree plan meticulously, that's why the 4-year degree becomes a 5 and a 6-year degree. And it costs, you know.
You take only one class.
Right, you can be there for another year.
Went 5 years solely because of one prerequisite that they didn't track.
I've been in a holding pattern for a particular PhD level class for like 3 semesters now, because they just won't offer it. I don't know why, like, I just keep trying to sign
Some
up for it.
classes only get offered in the winter, or they only get offered in the spring, and so you were planning on graduating, but now you have to wait a whole nother year because the one class you need is only offered, you know, at once a year, or one, you know, every other semester or something like that, so. Track that degree plan. Go to a school that cares enough about you to help you track your degree plan.
Mrs. Mueller, I wonder if some creative solutions, let's say the worst happens and a student ends up in that position where they're not going to graduate. Is that something like what you had with Spanish?
Oh yeah, I took Spanish. I took an entire semester Spanish class in 36 hours on the internet. Yeah, it was my senior. I know, Mrs. Lozano is like,
This is not what you should do.
No, don't
But
do this.
rather than
Don't do this.
Yeah.
I was not going to graduate. I was going to a private 4-year liberal arts college that you know was not inexpensive, and I was on the basketball team. I had 2 part-time jobs. I was in school. I got a minor. I was doing a lot, and I just didn't take Spanish. It was at 8 a.m. 5 days a week. That's another thing. I talked about getting into college in this presentation. Being a good student in college is a different presentation. Maybe I should do that also this semester because we have lots of advice. Some of it we learned the hard way. Yeah, it was my spring semester, and in order to graduate, I needed a Spanish class. And this is kind of, you know, if you plan ahead enough, you might be able to do something like take it online or take it. You could leave the school and take it at a junior college and then transfer the units in. But a lot of schools have a tricky requirement where the last 3 units you complete of your degree have to be completed at their institution to stop you from pausing, going somewhere else, doing it for a lot less money, and then transferring the units in to graduate. So you have to look out for that too. There's a lot of things you have to look out for.
I did something exactly similar. Like following my degree, it was Spanish. And it was 5 days a week at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
I took Spanish 1 my first semester, said, well, that was hard and horrible, not going to do that again, and then just forgot about the next 2
But now
semesters.
you've learned that it was wonderful and you missed out, right?
Just forgot about the next 2 semesters until I was sitting with a graduation counselor, and she was like, you have 1 semester of college left. What's your plan for 2 semesters worth of work? I said, I don't know. So I took an online class in summer school. Not the way you want to like finish your graduation.
I think it.
Majors and minors, are they underneath the undergrad, and how do they work?
Yes.
It's like a focus. So you have generally in an undergrad degree, you're going to have 2 years of gen ed sort of requirements and then 2 years of major specific requirements. So the bachelor's is an inherently sort of generalized degree, but it also has some sort of specific direction for your classes. And so your major stuff is like your focus in your sort of non-required classes. And it's sort of what you're training towards. And that there are many different majors, and almost everyone changes. I changed mine 4 times. It wasn't in the course of 1 year, which is wild to me.
And does it have to be like specific, like to the exact thing you want to do? Like say it's like a smaller field,
of a certain thing, does that be to that, or is it like whatever like overarching idea there is?
It can be either one. It really just depends on the school. So the schools, whatever school you go to is gonna have different major offerings, and it'll just depend, right? Like you can get like a bachelor's in math, right? Which you do a lot of things with that, right? There's a lot of different directions you can go. But there's also really like specific stuff that you can do.
And there's careers that require licensing. And so a degree plan like nursing or teaching in a public school, where a degree plan would get you that licensing as you go along. And, so then you'd be pretty specific. You'd be working in specific areas, but there's lots of majors that are much more general.
And you can major in as many things as you want. It just depends on how much time you want to spend in school. So some people can complete a double major in 4 years. Some people complete a double major in 6 years. Some people can complete a major and a minor in 4 years. Some people can do it in 5 years. It really just depends on if you're going to be working, if you're willing to take 18 units of college every single semester.
And the major subject.
Yeah.
A lot of science majors, for instance, are much more unit intensive. You're going to have to take 60 to 100 units of just your major. An English degree that I got at my institution was 30. So I have a lot more flexibility. I could double major, I could get a minor. It just depends on your area of study.
This brings up something that reminded me of. Philosophy majors, statistically, I was a philosophy major, get the highest LSAT scores. Did you know that?
No.
That's your LSAT
That's
score.
philosophy.
My LSAT score is non-existent. I haven't taken the LSAT.
Can I follow up on this for one quick second? There's I think a common perception that like your major is the most important decision you'll ever make in your life. And there may have been a time when that was maybe even approximately true. As recently as 5 years ago, I was doing some research in preparation for tonight actually, an organization called the National Association of Colleges and Employers, which kind of tries to match up sort of what do colleges do and what do employers expect. And they do it every year. Every year they survey major employers in the United States and ask them, what do you want the college graduate? And all sorts of fine, detailed questions. Among the questions they ask, though, sort of, what are the most important factors when you look at a resume? What are you looking for? For many years, major was the #1 thing. About 5 years ago, it ceased being the #1 thing, and for the last 5 years, it's been dropping down that list precipitously. Majors matter less and less all the time. Now, as Mr. Mueller said, certain degrees require licensure that matter, and you better follow that plan then, right? But the vast majority of careers in America don't require licensure, or require graduate education you're going to have to get anyway, and your major will matter a whole lot less in those circumstances.
So I have two questions. One is about the gap year, or maybe the gap semester. What are y'all's thoughts on that? And the other is about majors, I guess, but there is a assessment that you can take. And so I go to HCC, and they offered me an assessment to see what your personality is like, and blah, 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 blah. Is that available with y'all? No? Do y'all know anywhere we could do something like that? And then the gap year. So, any thoughts?
Mr. Mueller took a gap year.
I did. So look at me now. Stuck here with you guys. No. So I did, and I really highly recommend at least my version of it. And part of that was only available to me because I was enrolled in dual credit classes during high school, which many of you are. So that's great. But
what was your version of it? What was your version of it?
I'm getting there. So the private high school I had attended from 7th through 9th grade tanked. It was very much unlike this school. And then my parents were like, well, we haven't homeschooled you in 3 years. That was K through 8 for me. We haven't homeschooled you for 3 years. We're not really sure what to do with you. You're a little weirder and scarier now than you were. So they put me in community college. And that was a somewhat strange experience, but mostly pretty okay, pretty positive. I ended up in some good communities. And what that meant, though, was that by the time I was 17, I had something like 72 units and I had my AA. But I was also, because community college was kind of the pinnacle of my academic experience, which in some ways was fine, but in other ways I was like, well, if the rest of it is like this, then maybe I won't go to a university. Like, that would be new. And clearly I hadn't thought this all the way through. But I didn't feel sure yet. I didn't feel sure that there was any place that really appealed to me and that I wanted to invest that kind of time and money in. And I was just very interested in traveling. I had done a little bit of traveling with my dad my senior year of high school. And by a little bit, I mean just 1 week. But that was enough to kind of give me a glimpse of other cultures and languages and history, and kind of become really enkindled with these interests. And so I stopped attending school. Yeah, I didn't drop out. Had my AA, just didn't know where I wanted to go. So I decided to do the gap year. Worked really, really hard for 6 months and saved up a bunch of money.
What kind of job did you have, Mr. Mueller?
Well, construction for some of that, and then I was also a waiter.
What kind of waiter?
This was actually before the time where I was a dancing Greek waiter. Since that's what you were trying to get to. Anyways. So I worked a lot for 6 months, and then lived in the Czech Republic for 3 months, and then traveled from Prague to Paris over the course of 1 more month, and had a wonderful time. And I went to way more museums than you would expect an 18-year-old man to go while I was touring through Europe, but that is me. So, yes.
That does sort of bring up another question. I know you guys travel a lot. You know, y'all been gone. I'm like, is it possible to connect with you and wherever travels y'all are doing, like send Kylie traveling with you when you're traveling or something like that?
If Kylie wants to come on a school trip, absolutely, yeah.
You know, I mean, she's almost done, so I don't know what school.
You mean like after graduation?
Yeah, yeah.
I think our alumni would be welcome to join school trips, yeah.
We just need to be willing to go
I want to
back
give
out.
the other side of a gap year, though.
Okay.
Gap years aren't good in and of themselves unless you're young, right? So if you're a 17, just turned 17-year-old high school graduate, which like I have a youngest sister who was like that. She just kind of sped through school, and she probably wasn't quite ready to like move away from home. I knew a lot of people who just kind of didn't know what they wanted to do, so they took a gap year, which meant they hung out at their parents' house and slept a lot and lost all motivation for college.
Yeah,
like that's what the year looked like.
And you get out of academic shape, right?
It's hard,
It's
yeah,
like
it's
being
really
in
hard.
athletic shape. If you're out long enough and you aren't keeping yourself active, mentally active, it's very challenging to rejoin the halls of academia because you've been playing video games and sleeping in till 12:30 every day.
And that phrase gap year comes from people who are really rich and send their kids to Europe for a year, right? Like, and so for most of us, for most of us, here's a great way to spend a gap year. You know what kind of college you want to go to. You need a nest egg to get there. Work your butt off for a year. Get $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in the bank and then go to college.
Yeah, I think a gap year that you have a goal, that you're intentionally building responsibility and you have to pay rent a little bit, even if it's to your parents.
With that in mind, does it mean if you took a gap year as a exiting high school senior into freshman, does that impact your ability to get scholarships, loans, or whatever at incoming freshmen? That kind of level?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
It sort of depends. I've spent a lot of my career on the admissions side of things, right? I've been a parent too with a kid coming to college, right? So I know what you're going through. I'm sorry for you. But I've also been on the admissions side, and I can tell you from the admission point of view, especially at sort of the more elite, tier 1 schools, they look at gap years with suspicion, right? Because how does it normally work for most people? They spend a lot of time doing nothing, wasting, playing video games. The exceptional gap year, where somebody works really hard, has an extraordinary experience, right? That's a plus. you're eligible for all the same financial aid application, right? You can do all that stuff. But if your gap year is, well, that person looked lazy, they're going to move down on the scale of aid, right? That person looks fabulous, they move up the scale on aid, right?
Okay.
So that's the way to think about it.
You may also need to retake your exams.
That's true, depending on how much time.
So if you're like taking your SAT this year, it won't apply in 2 years, you'll have to retake it.
I should add that part of what I was doing in the Czech Republic for those 3 months was teaching English at a series of public high schools in Prague. They were just so excited to have an American student there. They were like, oh, cool, you speak way better English than our English teacher.
Good thing, too.
So even going there was the kind of thing, yes, there was the inner drive to go and travel and explore. I knew it would look good for applications.
Yeah.
That was there too.
It goes back to the college essay.
Yeah.
You can tell a story about how you did something outrageously awesome with the year that you decided consciously to take off of school. Woo! They'll be very excited about you.
Yeah.
I have a question that kind of goes back to how you said the major thing is dropping in importance when they graduate, but I know people change their majors a lot or don't know. How does that, are some schools tougher on admission or not, versus if you know what you want to do versus you might be a little like, I'm not so sure? How do you...
Some majors, you have to go to the school in blind faith that you'll be accepted into your major program, and then you have to try to seek admission to your major after you've already completed your gen ed. So if you're really passionate about getting, let's say, a nursing degree from a specific school, you could go to that school, go to school for 2 years, apply to the nursing program, and be rejected. So that's the case for some degree programs. Some degree programs, you say, I'm going to major in this, and they say, great, join us. Do your gen ed first, finish your prerequisites, and you'll be welcomed right into the major, no trouble at all. But if you're trying to get into a competitive program, let's say it's an architectural design program, an engineering program, a pre-med program, you are going to be subject to additional testing to get into your program, and it won't happen until you've been at the school for a few years. So that's something to consider if you're going into a field where you need a very specific degree. Oftentimes, the universities that offer those degrees, there are lots of people who want to get into those programs because there are lots of people who want those jobs, and so they create an additional funnel for you that may exclude you from the program that you want.
And also read the fine print, because
Yes.
like I have a buddy that went to Cal Poly on a full scholarship and then decided he didn't want to be a biochem major because it was too hard and not what he wanted to do, but he couldn't retain his attendance at the university just changing majors because the school was so impacted that you had to stay in your major. So he had to give up his full ride and then go do the college somewhere else.
I know A&M sometimes requires major-specific applications. So if you're applying to be an engineer at A&M, you might not get into that program and therefore not be able to go to the university. That's typically large research universities, liberal arts universities.
And you do have to compare the schools. What might be true at one school, it's very competitive, it's not at another school.
Right.
So what you think you might know might not apply to the school you go to.
How important do you think are getting internships in high schools are? Or college? I know it's important for college.
Internships and work experience are valuable because they help you understand what's available to you in the world. They teach you discipline, they teach you hard work, they teach you how to do something you may not care a ton about, to the best of your ability. Those are the reasons that colleges are interested in you doing those things. If you haven't had an internship, it's not going to make or break your college application. Again, there are some specific types of programs that specific internships will really benefit you. So if you're going into a medical field, your volunteer hours had better have been at the hospital, just because it really makes your application sound, because it makes it clear that you already have focus and passion for the thing that you're saying you're going to go to college for. But if you have a finite enough time, which you do, you only have a finite amount of time, right? I would encourage you to nail your studies at the school that you're going to, rather than dilute yourself so much that you're only doing a portion of your ability at lots of things. You should they want to see that you've had a wide exposure, that you're interested in lots of things. That means you're a more interesting person, maybe. I don't know. Sometimes they don't care. It really depends. So if it's a great internship that's going to give you great opportunities, take it. If you need an internship because you need to learn some basic like adulting skills, like for job responsibility, then you could do any sort of internship and benefit from it. But I don't know. Does anybody else have?
I had an internship that to my knowledge, has never affected job or anything like that. But it was a wonderful experience for me. I worked at a daily newspaper for a summer as a writer, as a reporter. And I wrote stuff and published stuff and took pictures, and it was incredibly valuable for me. Just to learn to write, have an editor, get things published, get things out there, and learn an eye for what kind of stories need to be told. It's never affected me getting a job, to my knowledge.
Along those lines, so the same research I was doing earlier from the NACE, what has displaced majors as the most important consideration? It turns out, this is going to be shocking, it was shocking to me, internships and or job experience in college is more valuable to employers, are you ready for this, than your GPA or the reputation of the school you attended. They want to know that you can work and be responsible. So there are lots of ways to prove that, right? But one way to do that might be a quality internship.
Yeah.
In college.
In college,
Yeah, in
right.
college.
Not so much high school, in college.
Yeah, because once you get out of college, you'll start applying for your first entry-level jobs and then see that, like,
They require
maybe they don't
3 years of
exist. They're like, it's an
experience
entry-level
and-
job that you have to have had 2 years of experience in the field. You're like, that,
How?
what? This is impossible. This is not how time works. And so, yeah, college internships are really great for things like that.
As the college counselor for this school, like I do all of the seniors Common App recommendations and stuff. One of the questions, or a couple of the questions that get asked on all applications of me, of the school that you're going to, is has this student taken the most demanding course of study, a fairly demanding course of study, or have they taken the easy way out? And this is because colleges know they can't depend on GPA because schools like, not us, but schools like lots of schools inflate your GPA, weight it, they do all these crazy things to make it look better than it is. They can't rely on the test scores because the SAT isn't a good measure of college success. So they're looking for ways to see you as a whole student and as a whole picture. And one of the ways they do that is asking me, as your high school administrator, are you invested in this school now, and are you taking the most challenging courses that you can? And that's going to make a big difference in how they look at your transcript. And so if you're spreading yourself too thin, trying to get all these like extra thingies that people have told you are valuable, it can actually be detrimental because your job now is school. And that is what colleges are going to look at. How hard was your high school? Are you getting through calculus? Are you getting through hard sciences? Are you doing it with a pretty good grade? It doesn't have to be a perfect grade, right? It just has to show that you're really working. That means a lot. And so that's like Mrs. Mueller said, focus on school.
Mr. Coachman,
I just wanted to mention my own experience with my own daughter again. Certain schools like UT and A&M are really big about getting companies to the campus to provide internships. So you might look and see which schools do that for you. And from my own daughter's experience, she had an internship for 2 years with the same company. They basically groomed her and then gave her a contract the fall of her senior year, and she's doing very good because of that.
My sister had an internship with Tom's Shoes, and then an internship with a PR company. And the second internship with the PR company ended up hiring her, and she's worked there for 9 years. With a brief stint in a different PR company. But the internship that she had in college was incredibly valuable for her.
Exactly.
So what credits are required to graduate from, like, I don't know if it's different, like high schools in general and then this high school? And are extracurriculars like super important, like not important at all?
This is a great question.
Yeah, so in the state of Texas, you have to take 26 high school credits, and they're going to have certain categories, like English, math, science, things they call electives, which are actually lots of different things that aren't necessarily electives, social science, PE, that kind of thing. At the Saint Constantine School, we're going to require you to take at least 32. That's because we require math, we require 4 years of math, 4 years of science, and 4 years of English, and 3 years of foreign language, all of which is 1 unit above, 1 credit above the basic Texas requirements. One of the reasons we do that is because that gets you a Texas Distinguished Diploma, which is a distinction by the state that your high school career has been harder than some other people's. And so getting through 4 years of all that core subject is really important. You'll notice that St. Constantine doesn't have a ton of elective options and no elective options that replace your core, right? You can't not take trigonometry because you're taking some math class over here. We do that because, again, the rigor of your high school education actually really does matter. When they look at those classes, they want to see that you're not taking consumer math your senior year. That makes a difference versus calculus. It may be the right choice for you depending on how dumb you were at math. I was kind of like that, so I did not take 4 years of math in high school. I should have, I didn't. And so we do require more. I think I'm noticing a qualitative difference in our seniors this year who did do a little extra here. Like, I think the way their transcript and experience comes off just looks really, really good. But it doesn't actually have to be that much, right? Like, if you are here for the normal course of study, you're going to take music class and an art class and a PE class on Tuesday, Thursday. That leaves you with 2 free periods. Spend one of those free periods doing an elective class, and your high school transcript's going to look super robust. And you're going to have way beyond what a lot of high schools require of you.
What about extracurriculars?
Like non-high school
events. Part of what Brianna said, like other stuff that you do.
So there's a lot of things that fall under that category. Here and in most schools, things like participating in sports, doing theater, stuff like that. They're extracurricular in that they're not part of your core study. They're not extracurricular in that they still go on your transcript and they still add up to high school units. So that is exactly an example of like that one extra class you take every year. Maybe you're on the volleyball team, maybe you're in the Shakespeare club, maybe you're trying out for the play. That goes on your high school transcript and gives you a half credit or another credit above and beyond what you're doing for your core high school. If, this is where you have to know yourself, you're failing calculus because you're doing 3 of those, stop doing that. That's not worth it, right? Like, you want good grades in your core classes, so don't overwhelm yourself. But if you feel like you got yourself a little extra time and can put some effort into those, I think it's worth it.
And how many art credits?
We require 4 art, 4 music, and 2 physical.
Give Isabel the last question and then we'll.
Yeah.
So with those, I'm taking volleyball and theater as my art and physical education credits. Do those count as another extracurricular, or would those only count as the like basic credits?
They count as one thing.
They replace the units.
So if you're taking like fine art studio and you're also in theater club, then you're getting for 1 year, say you take 1 semester of theater, you're going to have 1.5 units of fine arts. If you're taking just theater, you're going to have 0.5. You know, so it's just, it all calculates itself.
Okay, we have lofty plans for Dr. Stacey to talk with you guys about College St. Constantine. What do you think about? We're 15 minutes over.
Let me say 1 or 2 quick things about that. Because in a way, I had this whole elaborate plan all set, and we covered like 3/4 of it up here, so that works out right. Mrs. Mueller said there are a lot of colleges and universities in America. It's almost, I mean, it's overwhelming, it's dizzying. If you start to really, now look, I'll bet, I know me, I'll bet most of you, could you name more than 100? Right there, 3,700, right? 4,700. Could you name half of them? I can't. You go down the cereal aisle at the grocery store. That seems like a lot of choices to me, right? This overwhelms that tremendously. How do you decide? And then, here, let me add something else. Why would you start another one? Do we need one more? In one sense, maybe the answer is no, but I think the answer is yes, because it's amazing. One of the reasons it's so hard to choose is because so many of them are clones and suffer from the same problems, the same, I don't want to use too strong a language. The thing that makes higher education in America problematic is common to almost all colleges and universities. There are lots of different types. There are public, there are private, there are religious, there are secular. There are still a handful of men's and women's colleges in America, one or two of each. In a way, it doesn't matter because they all, nearly all, suffer from many of the same problems. At least this is our perception. And oddly enough, it's not ancient history. Not too long ago, that wasn't true. Right? There was a time not that long ago, in the grand scale of things, like within the last 100 years, when higher education was thriving in America, was cutting edge in a way, in the best possible sense of that. I won't go into, if you want to know more about this, you can go and look at the video of our parent conference, where I talked about this very subject. So just splice that in here if you can get that. All those critiques drove people like Dr. Reynolds and people you see here to want to just, we can do better than that. And look, we can't do better than that for 50,000 students, right? That's not what we are. But we can do better than that for 50 students, which is, in fact, that's simply our goal. How do you have a meaningful relationship with 50,000 students? You really don't. But here's the problem. Education is, by definition, relational. Like, if you don't have a relationship, you're not really having education. So one of the things we wanted to do was build a program on a human scale, where we can be a community, where we can know each other, we can intimately understand the needs and the strengths of our students. It's one of the reasons we have weekly one-on-one tutorials with every college student. Every week, you spend an hour and a half with your professor, one-on-one, going over the work you've done, talking about the things you've been reading. Do you think I get to know my students? I sure do, right? How could I not? Try that at almost, little anecdote very quickly. My son was recently going through the same process of looking at colleges. And so we toured, right? We went to several schools around Texas. And every single one of them, I swear to you, said, we have small classes. One of those schools had a cap of 50 students per class. That's what they meant by small. 50 is small. One of the good ones had only 35 students per class. That's a very small class, 35. Hopefully that already sort of strikes you as, that sounds a little odd. How many students do you have in your classes here at Saint Constantine, right? I mean, we don't do 35. We wouldn't do anything like that to you. You can't get better than one-on-one, right? So much gets lost when you try to take that relationship that is education and try to spread out among 50 even, let alone a lecture hall of 500 or 1,000, or an online iteration of, like a MOOC of 10,000. Stuff happens, but it's not education. So that drives us to think, how can we do this better? How can we build those relationships? Do we have to be the biggest university on the earth? I can tell you, every university I've ever been involved in always saw bigger as better. How many students do we have? Let's get more than that, right? But maybe bigger isn't better, right? Maybe a community of a human size, right, where we can have a relationship, know each other, be a community. Maybe that's a better way. It doesn't solve everybody's problem, right? It doesn't answer every need, but it answers what the needs of our students might be. That's sort of one giant problem that I hope we're trying to fix here at Saint Constantine. Here's another giant problem, which is maybe even bigger. Mrs. Mueller pointed out, a little north of $35,000 is the average student loan debt. The average, that's this year. That's gone up every year since the 1970s. So that's if you graduated this past May. By the time your students will graduate, it'll be I don't know what it is, it's going to be a higher number than that. Probably a significantly higher number than that. The total, I pulled out the total student loan debt in America, it was a staggering figure, $1.5 trillion. That's what we owe as a nation in just student loan debt.
That would actually double like the national debt.
Yeah, it would poke, it's 1/12 of the entire national debt that the government's been building up since George Washington.
Andrew Jackson.
It's Andrew Jackson's fault. Right?
No, it's been building up since Andrew Jackson. He actually got us out of debt that one time.
There was that one time. You had a good history teacher, I can tell. It doesn't have to be that way, especially when you start to dig down to why does college cost so much? I like to say this without naming names, but I've seen this at many of the schools I've been involved with. It is not at all uncommon, it's fairly typical, that a third or less of the university budget is devoted to things that are academic. 60 to 70% is devoted to non-academic things. There's a broad category, all kinds of programs fit into that. But think about the tuition then, right? You're paying, what, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000? And maybe 30% of that is going to the actual education of your son or daughter. No wonder it costs so much, right? No wonder we have to borrow so much to pay for that, because we're paying for a lot of stuff that really doesn't have to do with educating your children. That part is what we've tried to cut out. As we said, our tuition next year is a flat $9,000 for the year. Now, as Mrs. Mueller said, we don't participate in federal financial aid. That frees us up to do a lot better things than we could do with the mandates that come with participation in those programs. So that's great. I don't apologize for that. I think it's good. It makes us stronger, makes us better. Also allows us to have total control over our pricing, right? We don't have to play the game that so many schools do, where they have a sticker price that nobody actually pays, right? We're going to give you your special scholarship, which is the same special scholarship we give everybody who walks in the door, make you feel good, but it's a business, right? They're selling you college credits. We don't want to sell you college credits. We want to help you become a better person, and in a way that you can afford. Like some of my colleagues have said, think about this just for a moment. Now, I swear I'll stop talking. If your son or daughter works, say, full-time, right, 40 hours a week or more if they can, over the summer, saves up as much as they can, maintains a modest part-time job during the school year, could they earn $9,000? They come awfully close to that, I'll bet. There's no reason to go into debt if you don't have all the extra stuff piled on top and the tuition that has to be charged to cover all those costs. So you can do it for $9,000, it turns out. You can get not just an education, a high-quality education for that. Better than you're going to get at lots of places, nearly any place I would suggest, but at a fraction of the cost. You don't get a climbing wall here. The one thing I learned, the other thing I learned when I visited all those schools was every single one of them had a climbing wall in the gym. I also learned that nobody ever climbs on the climbing wall. They're always empty. Now, if you're 8 years old, we have a climbing wall. Yeah. But if you're 18, please don't climb that wall. You can tell I'm passionate, right? I think what we do for our students is extraordinary. I understand we're not for everybody. Don't feel guilty. If you want to do something else, go do something else. But if you want to think about it, come talk to us, and I'd be happy to tell you some more details.
We have like more questions about college, like.
You can come to any of us.
Absolutely.
Anytime.
We don't want to talk to you.
We're around.
Physics questions only.
You'll notice
Yeah, just the easy
we're
stuff.
all sitting around at lunch because we have to like keep an eye on people. It's a great time to talk. Anytime. Just come over and ask questions.
Right now, I'm editing application essays for seniors as they come to me. We make ourselves available so we can help you in every way we can. And that goes for everybody here.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.